TV, a very nice TV, imagine, focused on health. And when I was there, a non-Adventist physician sent word that he wanted to meet with me, Dr. Kim. And so I said, well, why? He said, just come and meet me. And he gave me a very nice place for the meeting. And when he started to tell me his story, I was so fascinated, I said, hold it. I got out my camera. I said, I have to record this as an interview. And I recorded it just with no microphone specially, just recorded it. And I put it on YouTube. If you just type David Gates Pilot, you will find it on the YouTube channel. And Dr. Kim, we're getting 10,000 hits a week on that, where people are so fascinated by the story. And Dr. Kim told me he was the private physician for the Prince of Saudi Arabia. In the next picture, we'll see him with the Prince there. And the problem was he went to visit the palace. He was working in Saudi Arabia as a physician, and the Prince was suffering from severe headaches, some cervical problems in his neck, and he also had demons screaming in his ear at nighttime. And so the physician, being a Christian, decided to ask him to treat him. He said, my specialty is in Asian medicine. Could I see you? And so they went to the back room, and he prayed in his mind, Lord, circle this man with the presence of your Holy Spirit, and remove the demons from access to him. And he treated his neck, and in 5 minutes he was snoring. He slept for 4 hours, which he hadn't slept in a long time. And then he hired him as his personal physician. So he said, I had this opportunity to be in Saudi Arabia, in the royal palace, and to live there. And he said, and work. And because of that, one day I was reading some material or ran across something, he said, and I heard of this guy called Ron Wyatt. And he was talking about the Red Sea crossing. And he said it was very controversial, it appeared like. Some people completely disagreed, some people agreed. But he said, here I lived in Saudi Arabia, and I thought I have a unique opportunity to verify if Ron Wyatt was telling the truth or not. And so he took a letter from the prince, and he drove down with his family all the way down to the Red Sea crossing. And since he speaks Arabic, he was able to speak to the Bedouins. But the prince told him, it's dangerous there. You need to take a pistol. No, I'm a Christian, I don't need a pistol. But the prince gave him his pistol, and he said, no, I'm not going to use a pistol. But after he got in his car, the Holy Spirit told him, take a pistol. So he went to his house, and he pulled out a plastic pistol from his children's toy box, and he stuck it in his pocket. And he went with his wife and 2 daughters, and he drove all the way down there to the area where the site is supposed to have happened. And when he went into the fence, there's a big fence guarding it with military, they threw him out. But they didn't do anything to him because he had this letter. And then he broke in at another place in a fence and went back in again. And he was taking all these pictures, and he found much, much more evidence than Ron Wyatt found, because he was able to go inside the fence many times. He went there for 12 years. But on his first time, he went in several times, and finally 2 guys dressed in white gowns came to him and said, they asked him some questions, and they didn't know, as a foreigner, if he spoke Arabic, so they spoke to him in English. He only responded in English. But among themselves, he heard them talking. And they said, you take the wife, I'll take the 2 daughters. And he said, that's why, he said, Muslim women many times cover themselves up, is because among the tribal wars that the Muslims have down there, he says, stealing of the women is one of the primary things. So therefore, they cover their women up so nobody can see them. And so that kind of crept into the religion and the culture, but it's really more cultural than religious, because they're just trying to hide their wives from the marauders who would steal them. But he heard them say, let's lead them out, and then we'll assault them. So he was on alert as they were driving out. All of a sudden, they pulled in front of his car. They blocked the car. They got out with their swords. They put a sword to his wife's neck. They tried to go in the car and steal his keys, but he rolled up the windows and locked the door. But his wife's window was already down, and they had a sword right here to his neck, and they were going to steal. And I said, okay, I'll get the wife, you get the daughters. And then the Holy Spirit whispered in his ear, you have a gun. So he quickly pulled out this plastic gun, and this time speaking in Arabic, not in English, he told them, get down on the ground, you dirty dogs. And they saw the gun, and boom, immediately they dropped everything. And he put his foot on top of their head, and he took away their swords, and he took away their car keys. And he told them, I should shoot you. No, please don't shoot us, And he says, okay, I will drive away, but if I see you get off the ground in my mirror, I will come back and have to shoot both of you. We won't move. We promise we won't move. Okay. So he took their keys and he took their swords. They got back in and they drove away. And their lives were saved because of that plastic gun that he had. He went back 12 times, but his wife and daughters, for some reason, did not want to accompany him on the other trips. But let's look at one of the things he said. When Moses fled out of Goshen the first time, he made a direct beeline over the top of the Red Sea and went down to where Jethro was in Midian. And you know, he served there 40 years with Jethro. But the next slide shows that when he took Israel out, he went for the same exact route, because you remember, God told him, go bring your people back to the same mountain and worship me on the same mountain. You remember that. And so he headed straight over there, and Exodus says that God told him to go backward and to go south, and they ended up on this little Nueva beach right there. You can see the little beach sticking out there along the Red Sea. And he said, because Pharaoh will say in his heart, they are lost, and the desert has eaten them up. And so when Pharaoh heard that Israel had not escaped, in fact, they were stuck in a little dead-end valley on a beach, he got his courage up. And what God wanted Pharaoh to do was to follow up on this. And Sister White says God could have chosen a Pharaoh that was very tender-hearted, but God chose a Pharaoh that was very hard-hearted to demonstrate his power. And so he didn't make Pharaoh that way, but he knew Pharaoh was going to resist everything. So Pharaoh came down and trapped them on that beach there. Next one. And there is the beach on the one side, on the Sinai Peninsula, and then God had an east wind to come, and it opened up. There's kind of like a bridge right there, and so they came across on dry land, and so he went through and saw the beaches, saw everything. Next slide. He found many more petroglyphs, even than what Ron Wyatt found, because Ron was not allowed in that area. He was put in prison for 3 months with his 2 sons. I know Ron's family, his 2 sons and daughter, and they went with him. They were in prison, the 2 sons. There's an Egyptian bull that Ron White did take a picture of that. And then you can see the shape of the bull. The next one shows an Egyptian bull, similar shape. But Ron did not have any evidence about the Jewish connection. Next one. You can't maybe see it very well, but you can see that there is a menorah turned sideways. Can you see that? He took it to Israel and he showed it to the Department of Antiquities, and Israel said, this is 2,500 years older than any menorah they have ever found. And Israel, the Israeli government and the Department of Antiquities is very enthusiastic about his findings. He was there talking to the prime minister and the president in Israel. Next. This is Jethro's home. It's on all the old maps 500 years ago. You can see old maps that were written, and it says Jethro's home is on the maps. And this is where Moses dated his wife. And this is where he married her. This is interesting. And all the locals know that this is where Jethro lived, and everybody knows where Moses was. Nobody locally in Arabic will deny everything. They will verify everything. The problem is most people don't speak Arabic unless you live in that region. Next one. This is the cave in Mount Horeb where Elijah hid, and some of the remains on the very top. You can see where Mount Sinai was. He went to the top of Mount Sinai, by the way. When he was approaching Mount Sinai, he told me this the next day, actually, and he called me back. And then he looked up my name on the internet, and he called me, I got to meet with you again. So I went back the next day. This time we went to the Israeli Center, and we met there at the Israeli Museum, where they have the biggest influence there in Korea for Israel. And he said as he was approaching Mount Sinai, a big cloud started to gather. It became a pillar and descended over Mount Sinai while he was there with a lightning and rain. And the local Bedouin that was with him said, it never rains in the desert. But it was so heavy, the rain, they had to hide in the car. But he laid down. He actually knelt down, took off his shoes, and he laid down in the rain as he recognized God's power, because it never rains, and God was doing something special for him. And then he went over this pillar right there. We'll back up one. The pillar right there was what Ron Wyatt found, took a picture of it, and then when he let the Arabs know about it, they cut it off, and it was inscribed in 4 languages on both sides of the Red Sea by Solomon, stating, this is the Red Sea crossing. But when the Arabs found it, they cut it off, and they put a little flag there, but nobody knows where it is. Well, he asked them, the local Bedouins in Arabic, what happened to that pillar? They said, oh, the military just threw it offshore. It's lying in the water. So he found out where it was. And on the opposite side, there's another pillar, but it's been eroded by sand, and you can't read it very well. Here's a rock that found there also in that area. It says Yahweh on it. Very interesting Jewish connection. Next one. Some of the different, there's evidences of millions of people living at the base here of the mountain, whereas at Mount Sinai that has been claimed to be Mount Sinai in the Saudi Peninsula, in the Sinai Peninsula, there's no evidence whatsoever that anybody has ever lived there. Here there's plenty of evidence. Next. And there is Mount Horeb. You can go up to the top and you can see where the water is flowing out. There's water erosion, like a big river came up from the top of that rock. It's 50 feet high, by the way. It's 16, 17 meters high. So it's a very, very big rock. And then he took out a box and he said, I want to give you something. Only the museum has one of these. And those 2 tables of stone you have there are carved from a rock from Mount Sinai. And he gave me the only other copy. The other one is in the museum. And he gave me this copy and he said, David, I want you to take it. It's written in Proto-Aramaic. And as you can see, I just put the picture on there so you could kind of see better, but he gave me these 2 tables of stone. We didn't know which one was the first one and which one was the second one. I don't read Proto-Aramaic, but it was pointed out. You know, it's all lined up on the left. You can see everything is on the left. I'm sorry, on the right, because you read Hebrew, early Hebrew, from the right to left. But you can see that thou shalt not, thou shalt not, thou shalt not. Probably the one on the right is the second set of commandments, because they're shorter. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not, the letters are the same. You see how they begin the same? The first 2 letters on the right. And so we figured out that's probably the right order. But we don't know for sure. I was looking on but anyway, he gave me this as a gift, and he said only the museum has another set. So I just brought it to show you the beautiful little gift that Dr. Kim gave to me. And then he said, what church do you belong to? He said, I said, Seventh-day Adventist. And he said, are you a minister? I read on the internet. I said, yes, I'm an ordained minister of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And he said, the same church as Ron Wyatt, right? I said, yes. And he said, you know what? He said, I'm learning to keep the Sabbath. That experience changed me so much that I am learning to keep the 7th day holy. And he said, it wasn't an accident that Ron was chosen. He said, God chooses humble people, maybe not qualified people, to do it, because God doesn't always use qualified people. He qualifies those that are called. And so this was Dr. Kim's testimony. And I just wanted to share that with you because that was what happened to me just a few months ago. He himself went there and he said, I just want to share my testimony with you. And I share it with you too, because these are things that actually happened to him, and he has more pictures and more evidence than anybody else that we know of about the Red Sea crossing. But they did make a video, a documentary called The Exodus Conspiracy. We'll hold that video just a second. And The Exodus Conspiracy. And he said, but we're afraid to release it, because if we release that video with all the documentation we have about the crossing, he said what will happen is it'll start a war, because Israel will probably want to take possession of that area. And the Arabs have missiles on top of Mount Sinai to stop anybody. They're scared. This might happen. That's why they closed it off. So he said, we don't want to release the video. We don't want to start a war. But we have so much evidence of the real crossing area that he said it would make Israel want to possess that country or that area. As I have been traveling around, I have run into, my wife and I have run into a lot of interesting situations. Right now, the church is filled with conflict. There's conflict in every area. There's conflict over theology. There's conflict over ordination. There's conflict over dress. There's conflict over music. The church is filled today with all kinds of conflicting points of view and everything. And as God is getting ready to pour out His Holy Spirit, as the Holy Spirit is taking possession, working together, working together with what Jesus is doing in the most holy place. So we have God the Father ruling, Jesus ministering, the Holy Spirit teaching, impressing, and we're working. They're working together, the three of them, to be able to finish the work. And what God is looking for the most, He's trying to develop unity among God's people. This is what He needs the most. Did you know that when people pray together and work in unity, it terrifies the devil? Because if God's people can get together and pray and work, there's no limit to what God can do. The biggest difficulty for God is unity among His people. Now, we don't expect everybody to be united because we have every type of problem in the church. But if you really are expecting to be sealed and go to heaven and be alive when Jesus comes, or to be ready when Jesus comes, even if you have to go to the grave, you can't be fighting with your brothers and sisters. You can't. If somebody else wants to fight, let them fight, but you don't fight. Just be